Hey, welcome to week 2 of the small group study on stories that Jesus told. Now, this past weekend, it was Memorial Day weekend. We had a special guest speaker in, and man, it was super encouraging. It was a great way to celebrate Memorial Day. Man, what a challenging message. But we're actually going to stay in the theme of the parables, of the stories that Jesus told. So we're going to go into another parable today, but it kind of piggybacks off the parable I started the series with. I started with the parable of the vineyard workers and how some of them came at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12, 3, 5. They all worked different amounts, but the vineyard master paid them all the same. And our reaction to that is just this very gut-wrenching, that's not fair. But that's where grace steps in. You see, if it's fair, then it's not grace. That was our big idea. So we're going to look at that in another arena today, in the idea of forgiveness, another area that just doesn't seem fair sometimes. And we're going to look at another parable from Jesus that really kind of drives this home. It's found in Matthew chapter 18. And you've got it there in your small group study. You guys can read it along. In fact, you're going to read it again when I'm done, but I'm just going to kind of walk through the story here. It says this: Then Peter came to him, who's Jesus, he's coming to Jesus, and he asked, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? Now, just so you know, Peter here's being pretty generous. Like, he's going over and above the standard. He's like, I know, Jesus, you have a higher standard. I know we're your disciples. So, man, if someone wrongs me, probably 7 times, right? And Jesus says, no, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. That's a whole lot more. That's 490 for all of you non-mathematicians out there. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts to date with the servants who had borrowed money for him. So I love this. Jesus answers this question and he goes right into a story, right into the parable we're going to talk about today. He said, in the process, one of the debtors who was brought up owed him millions of dollars. Now, millions of dollars. How do you get in debt millions of dollars? You make some big mistakes somewhere. Some bad investments. This isn't just not saving away for retirement. This isn't just, a failed, you bought a bad car, you had a lemon. There were some really major, probably business decisions. I don't know how you get $1 million in debt, but this guy got $1 million in debt. And when you're $1 million in debt, you don't have a whole lot of hope of paying that off. The point is, he's got a debt that there's no way that he can personally pay back in his lifetime. It's just not going to happen. So he comes in, he's got this debt. He owes him millions of dollars. He couldn't pay, obviously, so his master ordered that he be sold, along with his wife, children, and everyone he owned, to pay the debt. But the man fell down before his master and begged him, please be patient with me, I will pay it all. Then his master was filled with pity for him, and he released him and he forgave his debt. But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. So once again, it's a significant thing that he owes him, a couple $1,000s, but it's nothing compared to what he just got forgiven of. His fellow servant fell down before him and begged for a little bit more time. Be patient with me and I will pay it, he pleaded. But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and put into prison until the debt could be paid in full. When some of the other servants saw this, they were very upset. They went to the king and told him everything that had happened. Then the king called the man that he had forgiven and said, you evil servant, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you? Then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. That is what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brother and sisters from your heart. Wow, we look at this passage here, and once again, we kind of get into this theme of what's fair. And this guy that had this huge debt, what was fair for him is that it's fair that he pays that debt. He got himself into that problem. He should pay to get himself out of that problem or pay the consequences. But his master had mercy on him. He had compassion on him. He decided to give grace instead of make him pay back what he owed. That's where grace entered the equation. But this grace obviously didn't impact this guy. I mean, he was grateful to have it. He was like, man, thank you for the grace. But when it came to giving to someone else, he seemed to have forgotten all that happened to him. He demanded the other person that owed him money pay him back. He was not merciful in return. And that's this dichotomy that we have in this passage. That's the tension we have here. is that God's trying to paint a picture to us in the area of forgiveness. Is forgiveness fair? Does anyone deserve forgiveness? No. But we give forgiveness because God has called us to forgive. God has called us not to hold accounts against other people. God is merciful, and He expects us to be merciful as well. Undeserved kindness, undeserved favor, grace. That's what it's all about. And He expects, because He's forgiven us, He expects us to forgive other people in turn. Now, you guys are going to take a couple moments here and you're going to talk about this passage. First, you're going to kind of talk about the facts of it, make sure you understood everything clearly. But then comes the real part, is you guys are going to talk about how this applies to your life. What are you wrestling with in this area of forgiveness? Here's what's going to happen. As you're going to answer some of those questions, you're going to learn from each other. You're going to walk away with some action points. But because you're in a small group, because you're in relationships, you get to check up on each other. You get to hold each other accountable in this area out of love and out of care for each other. So I'm excited that you're doing this in a group. I'm excited that you're sitting around in a circle. It's so much more powerful to do that than standing in rows. You are going to make a big impact in this area in your life today. So I cannot wait to hear. In fact, that's a big point. I would love to hear back how your small group's going. And if you would love to email at any time, it's pastorryan@palmvalley.org. I would love to hear some great stories about what God is doing in your small group and what happens when you take the lesson and you start applying it and talking about it in your group. So I'll see you next week. We have one more week in this series of stories that Jesus tells us. We have one more parable we're going to talk about next week. So make sure you gather back together and get ready to discuss the next one.